Welcome to Fun with Annuities, where every single week I welcome a celebrity guest expert that can help you maximize Chapter 2 of your life. Listen, learn, laugh, and love every minute of the most unique financial podcast on the planet. Let's get to it. Welcome to Fun with Annuities. I'm your host, Stan, the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent, licensed in all 50 states, including the one that you're sitting in. I want to welcome all of our podcast listeners on all the major platforms, and also you goal setters that are watching us on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel, so you can see our expressions and smiles and laughs and grimaces and all that stuff. Also, remember, I do have a Stan, the Annuity Man YouTube channel as well, with over 400 informative YouTube videos. And I think we're going to contact Guinness and say, hey, we have set the record, because how many videos can you do on annuities? I'm going to test that theory. Listen, today's guest is a superstar, straight up. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and hang in there with me, because you need to know who you're going to be listening to today. His name is David Blanchett. He's the managing director and head of retirement research for PGIM DC Solutions. They're a global investment management business, part of Prudential Financial, but his role primarily is developing research and innovations and solutions to help people improve their retirement income and retirement outcomes. So he's focused on the investors. Now, prior to joining that firm, he was head of retirement research for Morningstar. Most of you probably remember him from Morningstar. And before that, he was the director of consulting and investment research for the retirement plan consulting group at Unified Trust Company. Now, he's published hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles all over the place, just everywhere. His research has received awards, everything. I mean, people follow David and what David is thinking. He's currently an adjunct professor of wealth management at the American College of Financial Services and a research fellow at the Alliance for Lifetime Income. He holds his bachelor's degree in finance and economics from the University of Kentucky, go Wildcats, master's degree in financial services from the American College of Financial Services, go Retirement Incomers, a master's degree in business administration from the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, go Smart People, and a doctorate in personal financial planning from Texas Tech University, go Red Raiders, from my good friends Harold Avansky and Dina Katz, who run that program there. He has a beautiful wife and 4 beautiful kids, and he enjoys running and rooting for the Kentucky Wildcats, but I don't think at the same time. But enough of those impossible to achieve accolades. This is the way I look at it because David's here, and I'm so happy he is. If you want to talk about football and quarterbacking, you talk to Tom Brady. If you want to talk about shooting a basketball, you talk to Steph Curry. If you want to talk about playing a guitar, you talk to Eric Clapton. If you want to talk about songwriting, you talk to Bob Dylan. If you want to talk about college basketball recruiting, you talk to John Calipari. But if you want to talk about retirement, money, and the markets, you talk to David Blanchett. David Blanchett, welcome to Fun with Annuities.
Great to be here. Now, so you missed the University of Chicago is the Maroons.
I like Go Smart People. I thought that was really good.
That was good. But they're the Maroons.
The Maroons. What is a maroon, David? Let's just start right there.
I don't know. That's their mascot. That's all I got for you.
That's like my daughter went to NYU. Please, people, don't hold that against me. She got out of the house. It was great. It was an expensive way to get her out of the house, but they're like the purple or something. I mean, they're like something that makes no sense. I mean, I think their best athletic team was ping pong. Not kidding. So let's jump in. You wrote an article recently. I read it, and I immediately contacted you. And the title of the article was Retirement Income Investing in a Low Yield World. Talk about hitting the button and hitting the topic that everybody's talking about. Can we jump into that and start off with investors are not always rational, right, David?
Yeah, I mean, so almost all my research, right, is focused on this idea that people do the decision that they should, that emotions don't come into play. But we all know that that's not reality, right? I think that it's always important to kind of work from a framework of, what should people do if they're kind of, utility maximizing robots, but nobody is. And you've got to kind of, ask yourself this question: how do you maybe adjust a strategy to reflect the unique goals of investors? And one of the most kind of personal goals for a lot of folks is retirement. And people have very different perspectives on how to accomplish that goal. And I think that now more than ever, given where bond yields are, it makes things really tough. And so I think that, investors, advisors, everyone has to ask this question: how do I help people accomplish the goal that they want to accomplish?
That's a big question, though, because everybody's goals are customizable. Everybody's trying to achieve different things. One example that you listed was something called irrational preference for income. Can you kind of dig into that a little bit? I thought that was an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to like hate on people, but so in theory, right? In theory, what you should be indifferent between is spending down your portfolio and living off of income. Right. So let's say you could buy two companies. One goes up 5% every year like clockwork. One has a 5% dividend. Okay. In theory, an individual should be indifferent between buying the company that goes up 5% a year and selling 5%, or buying the one that has the 5% dividend. Right. That's not how people actually are. Right. People don't like the act of selling down their capital, their balance, whatever you want to call it. So people have a strong preference, at least most people do, a lot of retirees do, to not deplete their portfolio. They want to live off of the income. And again, like what you shouldn't care. You should say, well, I can just as easily spend on my portfolio. People don't want to do that. And so if you change the perspective from, okay, I'm going to focus on depleting my portfolio if I have to, versus I want to live off of income, it can kind of change your perspective on like, what is the efficient portfolio? How do you build portfolios, especially today, given where yields are?
But the low yield environment, perceived low yield, this might be the new normal, nobody knows, is driving people crazy because they're wanting that Jimmy Carter type yield that doesn't exist. And that's kind of where the bad sales practices, especially in the annuity industry, start taking place, where people are selling hypotheticals and theoreticals and back-tested junk. And at the end of the day, you're buying a contract. Overall, you're just looking at markets and things like that. But do you have a good or bad feeling toward maybe putting in an income floor, using lifetime income annuities, using the transfer risk, taking that longevity risk off the table, and using the mortality credits that are in place right now that I think are a bargain?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that today's environment is somewhat unprecedented, right? I mean, the average yield on 10-year government bonds has been about 5%. We're at about 1.5% today. So that affects every single investor out there. It affects mom and pop. It affects financial advisors. It affects mutual fund managers. It affects pensions. And so we're all kind of playing in a space right now where it's really hard to expect historical average returns. And you made a great point about I worry about a lot of advisors, a lot of projections if they rely on historical, because you cannot buy a 10-year government bond today yielding 5%, yield 1.5%, right? And so then, given where we are, it kind of begs the question again, like, what is the optimal strategy? And so, like you mentioned, one example of that. And so, when you get to retirement, every American, for the most part, has some kind of guaranteed income, Social Security benefits, right? Excellent base to kind of cover your non-discretionary expenses. Okay. The question that every household has to ask beyond that is, does that cover enough of my need money, the money that I know that I need to have guaranteed for as long as I live? And if the answer there is no, I think that's where you have to ask this question, okay, where else can I get it, right? One way to get it is delaying claiming Social Security if you haven't claimed yet. Another way that I think is actually increasingly attractive right now, and you alluded to this, is buying some kind of annuity or product that provides lifetime income. Now, there's all kinds of fun new flavors. There's a new product in Canada introduced, like a tontine, a few months ago.
That's Moshe. That's Moshe Molesky's baby right there, right?
But, yeah, and I don't want to, I don't want to, spend too much time on like, is there one kind that's better than others? Sure. But I think that too many people in retirement aren't asking these questions, and it's somewhat counterintuitive. But the lower that interest rates are, the more there's benefits to longevity pooling, right? So when you buy these products that have a group of people that that say, hey, it's like a public pension. Some folks might lose money, some folks might make money, but every investor today has to earn less off of their investments. But the benefit of longevity pooling hasn't gone away. And so for those folks that are really worried about, do I have enough money to provide income in retirement, these products make a lot of sense. And like, here's the thing, like if interest rates were like 8% and inflation was 2%, you don't have to worry about depleting your portfolio. If you can earn 6% guaranteed, you can't do that right now. In real terms, you're going to be just fine. But that's not today, right? Today is you're going to earn a negative yield on on government bonds, real yield. And what that suggests to me is that if you want to make sure that you're going to be okay in 20 or 30 years, you need to think about right now how you should reposition your portfolio to help accomplish that.
Does it keep you up at night when I mean, under the fact that we live in a pensionless world? And I think a lot of what's happening right now with people like you that are trying to advise consumers in a factual way, non-salesy way, because you don't sell anything, you are a researcher, you are the smart guy in the room. The fact that companies don't offer those type of defined benefit plans, that has to be the biggest problem right now facing the baby boomers coming out, because they have to convert what they have into an income type stream, whether they're just peeling off money from a growth portfolio. But at the end of the day, and I hate this word, we use it called decumulation. It's just horrific. What do you say to the person out there, the majority of the people out there that don't have that pension and the only annuity they own is Social Security?
Yeah, I've heard of defined benefit plans before. Like, I haven't actually seen one out in the wild yet for myself. Maybe I will one of these days. I hear they're out there. Some people have them. I can't wait to experience my own at some point. But
yes.
No, like defined benefit plans, are one of the best ways for individuals, if you stay with an employer for 30 or 40 years, to fund their retirement, right? The movement away from defined benefit plans radically changes the way that American households have to plan for retirement, right? I mean, in a defined benefit plan, you have institutional fiduciaries, professional money managers, actuaries, all these smart people figuring this stuff out. And you're pulling the risk together, okay? We're moving, significantly away from that approach to one where every single person is responsible for all their stuff. And to me, like that's terrifying, right? Because I mean, this is not easy stuff. It requires lots of good decisions for a very long time horizon. You don't know how long you're going to live, how much you're going to need to spend on stuff, what the returns of the market to be. It creates uncertainty and panic, and that's not how retirement should be, right? It is like both of my parents are retired teachers. They have almost all their income in the public pension. Like that's the ultimate easy button, right? Having to figure out how much you can take from a portfolio every month, every quarter, every year with all this uncertainty, that is like the opposite of the easy button. And you can get someone to help you. You can pay a financial advisor. I'm a big believer in that, to help you figure out what all those things are, but it doesn't alleviate the stress, right? We saw this back in 2020. I always make the joke, I love a good market downturn so I can study investor behaviors and see what we did wrong. And so the good news is we had one from
spoken like a true researcher.
Exactly. The bad news is it didn't last very long. But one thing that fascinates me about people and investors, and I actually saw this in 2008 and we saw it again in 2020,
sure,
is that you would think that the older someone gets, the better investor they become, the less irrational they are about reacting to downturns. But it's the exact opposite. And so if you look at trading behaviors in 2020, it wasn't those all these young kids that are on the news that were selling out of stocks. They actually leaned into stocks. Okay, like they got more aggressive as the markets went down. It is without a doubt, it's called a monotonic relationship. It was just perfect. And that the older you got, the higher the probability of you making a trade, and the more the portfolio you trade moving to a conservative investment. So they are like the worst market timers. And so what's happening, I think, is that retirement becomes more salient the closer you are to it, right? Your 401k goes down and you're like 35 years old. You don't care. What is retirement, right? But if you're 55 years old and you see the market dropping 10%, 20%, and you're 55, you have a very real reaction to what that means for you in terms of, oh my God, I'm not going to do this in retirement. I've got to get up. And so what you see happening is those individuals that can't afford to make a mistake are those that make them. And so I think that we have a situation now where you've got, each individual responsible for these decisions, and you might have an advisor, but a lot of advisors got fired in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think for me, like the best thing you can do is create easy buttons and a way to enjoy retirement where you're not stressed out all the time if the market goes down 5%, 8%, 9%. So
what's your take on, and for the senior citizens out there that don't be offended by this because we're all getting there. Do you think that what you just described also has to do with cognitive decline that we all have as we get old? I mean, you're young, I'm old. Other people listening to this that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Does that irrational decision making, does that also play into cognitive ability decline? Has that been studied?
It has. And so you know what what you see is people don't perceive their investment acumen ever trailing off. We think that we're just like solid to the bitter end. The problem is to your point, at older ages, we'll just say like 70, 75 plus, is where there starts to be a noticeable gap in actual abilities and perceived abilities. Like, it's really important because even if you have cognitive decline, but you could institute safeguards. You can say, hey, you know what, I'm on a downhill slope here. I have to make a change. The problem is if there's a gap in your perceived and actual abilities. And that's what tends to happen as we age. And there's obvious kind of additional implications there. So like as you age, you're going to be more susceptible to making poor decisions. You can't get the money back. And so like, again, like that's where if you have something that's locked in to provide income for life, you don't have to worry about it. But if you don't have that, there is the chance you can, make a poor decision. You can get preyed on by some kind of fraudulent scam. A lot of bad things can happen.
What's interesting about where we're headed with this conversation is it falls into, it's almost like saying you're overweight, or you are, when you start talking to people about cognitive decline or planning for that eventuality, which is going to happen, one out of one of us is going to have that. When you talk to the industry advisors, masters of the universe, are you advising them to at least broach that subject with people? Because that's a tough one. I do it all the time because I'm bull in a china shop. I have no problem talking to people about anything. And my clients are like nodding their head. But I do think that having some type of guaranteed income, or as some in the industry call it, protected income, it does put in that income floor and that peace of mind that when things happen in the future, things are taken care of. Do you see a shift with that, with the demographic tidal wave of 10,000 baby boomers hitting 65 every day? Do you see that kind of happening? And maybe that's an angle for a lifetime income products to be positioned?
Yeah, so I don't know that what I perceive is representative of the entire market, but I do believe that there is a rising interest among advisors, among the public, in products that provide protected or guaranteed income. There's lots of products that do it in different ways.
Sure.
But to your point, a lot of advisors, I think, will say to clients, hey, like I'm your key to ensure that nothing bad happens. Right. Well,
wrong answer.
Yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with that. Like, yeah. That's how people get money stolen.
Yeah.
The client can fire you and hire a really bad advisor instead. And so I think that
Sure.
Delegation is important. It's good to have that trusted advisor, but it's also good to have safeguards in place to ensure that nothing truly bad can happen. And the more of your money that is protected or guaranteed, it's this range of outcomes. And every day I see a story about some advisor who sold some Ponzi scheme that wiped out people's savings. Okay,
right.
Like that is not going to happen if you have money in a guaranteed or protected product. You've got income for life. And so I think that the key is finding that balance and just ensuring that no matter what happens with respect to the markets, that you've got what you need taken care of.
Do these market, at the time of this taping, do these market valuations and where we're at, is it making your stomach a little queasy? I've been queasy
for a while now. I don't get it. I don't know there's lots of metrics that you can use, like the CAPE ratio, it's the Schiller PE and others.
Sure.
Pretty much, what scares me, we've had like a market that's gone straight up for like 15 years or however long, at 14. I don't know what it is. Okay. Like that doesn't happen.
No.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I would love it if the markets went up 15% every year forever. That would, to me, would be, that would be spectacular, amazing. Use all the nice words you can.
Sure.
But we haven't had that, right? And there's like no point in history that markets just keep going up forever without a correction, right? Usually the longer it goes up, the longer then it eventually goes down. And so, someone can say, well, we had a correction in 2020. Well, we really didn't, right? We're already well past that point. And so, like, for me, I am genuinely concerned. Increasingly, I feel like that we're due for some kind of correction. I don't know when that's going to happen, what it looks like, but the markets have done awfully well for a long time. It just doesn't feel sustainable.
Yeah, when I read that people are buying, I'm nothing against cryptocurrency people. Nothing. But when I read that people are leveraging crypto to buy crypto, the old curmudgeon in me that's been here for 30 years is like, ooh, right. That kind of .com type play. Comes to the forefront. The other thing I read, and I don't know if this is true, maybe you have a better clarification on this, is over 90% of crypto is purchased by what we consider young people, not the old heads in the room. That's a little interesting as well, because all of those people have never seen market downturns.
Yeah, I have mixed to negative feelings on crypto. Just from the perspective of an investment, right? Sure, it has like a potential public use, and
Sure.
I don't want to, I don't know
Blockchain's real. We can all just say blockchain technology is real.
but I don't know how to quantify like how much Doge is worth or Bitcoin or any of those. Like, what is their value? I don't know, and so that's why I feel like you can buy them, but like it's effectively speculating. I mean, people, I talk to a lot of my friends. I've researched this for hundreds of hours, and I'm like, I highly doubt that your research is unbiased and representative of like a collective view of the thoughts on what crypto could
right.
be. It's like the rabbit holes people get on online anyways. And so, I would say that, like in terms of like a contagion effect for the markets, I'm less concerned about crypto because I don't know how, the market cap isn't necessarily high enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's younger people. So I think there's risks there in terms of obvious loss of capital, but I don't know that that's enough to kind of like, destroy the market or have the big downturn, but it could be one domino of five that happen at the same time. Like, I think the fun thing with market crashes is they always seem so easy to kind of predict after the fact, but it's looking forward that makes it really hard. So I think at some point we will have this negative shock. The question just is, well, what are the thing or things that cause it to happen?
I like how you started that sentence. The fun thing with market crashes.
I mean, gotta look at the bright side, okay?
Yeah, is you get to see your neighbor walk out in the front lawn and throw up, and you've never seen that before. In your article on retirement income investing in a low yield world, and by the way, we're going to have a page for David on the site with a link to this, so don't worry about it. We'll have that for you. There was a survey from probably the most energetic group of people ever on the planet, the Society of Actuaries. That was pretty interesting. Can you go into kind of the percentages of the senior citizens that plan to spend down their wealth? I found this fascinating and disturbing at the same time.
Yeah, so I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but I think one thing that if you look at it, and they do that survey every few years. And
let me read it for you. No, let me just read from your articles because it's straight. Only 17% of pre-retirees plan to spend down their wealth in retirement, while 32% plan to withdraw only earnings and try to leave the principal intact. That sounds like a dream world right now.
It is. Well, and so I think that like if we were in a place where bonds were yielding 4 or 5%, doable, right? I think that that's a realistic goal, possibly at that point, but it's just not today. And so I think that a lot of people are going to have to kind of recalibrate their expectations the longer we stay in this environment. And so that wasn't necessarily, I think that was like a 2019 survey. And that wasn't incredibly unrealistic then, but it definitely is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think that the longer we have this persist, the more that people have to kind of, really understand to the extent they can live off the income. And I think that, again, it gets back to the earlier idea that people when you don't know how long you're going to live, it just creates all this uncertainty, because as soon as you deplete your savings, you can't replenish that. I mean, like the job possibilities when you're 80 years old are not that enticing these days. That could change in the future, but unless you want to kind of be a Walmart greeter, it ain't going to happen, right? And so, when you stop working, you've got what you've got. Now, maybe you'll get an inheritance, things like that can happen, but I understand that very real fear that if you spend that money down, it's gone forever. Therefore, you don't want to do it. The obvious problem is you save that money to enjoy your retirement, right? And so if you want to maximize your life satisfaction, you need to find a way that you're comfortable behaviorally accessing your funds. And that to me is this whole, new thing I looked at. It's like this idea of a license to spend, and that's what protected/guaranteed income does. It gives you a license to spend. You don't have to worry anymore about, I've got to save if I'm going to live to 105, because that's taken care of. And so I think in the past, I've focused a lot on, maybe even too much on, the academic benefits behind, moving into protected income categories. I think the biggest benefits are actually behavioral. It's allowing someone to understand, hey, I saved this to enjoy my retirement. I can spend it if I know that I have income as long as I'm going to be alive.
And to me, it's all messaging, and it's all marketing. And obviously, I'm sitting here wearing all kinds of Stan the Annuity Man gear, so I'm into that kind of thing. But people have fire insurance and home insurance and flood insurance and car insurance, but somehow we have not sold income insurance or retirement income insurance, because it falls under the same categories. It's there when you need it, if you need it, but you probably are going to need it going into retirement because of just kind of where we're at. And the interesting part is, and you're probably seeing the same thing, the promises that I heard from people after the 2008 debacle, those people have forgotten that. Well, Stan, that's never going to happen to me again. I'm never going to let that happen to me again. But boy, the greed factor does take over when you see at this point people throwing darts at things and it's going up.
Right.
I mean, it's tough. From an inflation standpoint, I know I'd like to get your take on if you believe it's transitory or not. And then from there, what your advice is to people on how to address it, because there's no perfect answer, just bad sales pitches.
Yeah, I mean, I think the inflation question is a difficult one. I mean, I'm only 40, so I haven't experienced, the good old days of 10+% inflation. I don't think we're going to get back to that. I do think it could be an issue. I mean, I see it every time I go to the grocery store, right?
Oh, yeah.
You see it everywhere today. And so I think that, it makes sense that it could be very real, at least in the near future. But it does create interesting challenges for retirees. I think one really important point to make is that retiree spending does not increase every year by inflation, right? How much spending evolves in retirement depends a lot based upon, for example, each retiree's, if you were to group your spending into wants and needs, or essential, non-essential, discretionary, whatever you want to do it, and what you tend to see is that if inflation goes up, say 3% a year, spending only goes about 1% for the average retiree. Now, it actually goes up even less than that if you're spending a lot, because more of your spending tends to be on discretionary items. But when it comes to like retirement income strategies, I'm a little bit less worried about inflation because you have the explicit inflation income guarantee from Social Security. But then I do think it's important to layer on top of that, other benefits that possibly could have a fixed COLA or cost of adjustment, or other investment strategies like tips or real estate that provide a perfect or quasi-perfect inflation hedge. But I'm probably less concerned about inflation than maybe other retirement academics, because I just don't see that historical pattern where retirees actually increase their spending based upon CPI was up 2.5% last year, I'm going to spend 2.5% more a year. That just doesn't happen.
And I blame the media, like I blame the media for a lot of things. They just take inflation and it's a drive-by and they just kind of shoot it out there. They really don't know what they're talking about. And then it scares the heck out of people. And then everyone tries to find, the product to address inflation. And there's nothing out there that exists in a perfect world to perfectly address it. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about as well was something that came out in the Journal of Wealth Management. There was some research done, and you kind of went in and explored specifically the optimal equity allocations for income-focused investors. Can you dig into kind of what that is and put it in English for us peons out here to understand what you were doing and thinking?
Yeah, so we had talked about this actually at the beginning of the podcast, and this idea of like, how do you invest when you have low yields if you're focused on income, right? And so I will not get all weird mathy, or I'll try not to, I promise. But when we think about risk, normally it's like the volatility of an investment. So it goes up 5%, it goes down 10%, all that. Okay, so like government bonds are an interesting vehicle to assess from a risk perspective, because like long government bonds that have, say, a 20+ year maturity are actually pretty risky. Right. So there's like a rule of thumb that you can use for duration. So duration is kind of like maturity, how many years the payments are going to last, just kind of like cash flows. So, there's this rule where, like if interest rates go up 2% and you have a bond fund that has a 15-year duration, it would go down 30%. Right. So there's a lot of potential loss there for that bond fund. However, if you're going to hold that bond fund until maturity, you wouldn't realize that loss. Right. So if I buy a government bond, it's yielding 2%, and I'm going to hold that thing for 10 years. And then the kind of the definition of volatility changes, right? If I want to get 2% a year of income and I'm going to hold that thing no matter what, well, I shouldn't use the fact that it could drop in value. I should focus on how does it do in terms of creating sustainable income. And for that, it is like perfect. It is often described as the risk-free asset for investors. Well, if you take that perspective on a portfolio, if you ask this question, well, I am focused not on the variation in the volatility of the investment. I'm focused on income. I want income stability, right? So for a stock portfolio, that's dividends. You're going to say, I'm not worried about, whether it goes up and down. I want consistent dividend income. If it's from a bond portfolio, it's the yield. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you take that perspective, that more behavioral perspective, it actually does make equities look quite a bit more attractive today, simply because, the dividend yield on the S&P 500 actually exceeds the yield on 10-year bonds today. That's not to say that equities are by any means a bargain or a good deal, but if you're focused on income, the historical evidence does suggest that it actually might make sense to own some equities just based upon relative yields.
It's a
Hope it
t-
wasn't
it's
too mathy.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird environment that we're in, including I wanted to get to kind of the political silly season that's always occurring in DC. And I'm assuming when you're doing your research, there's probably two parts to it. There's the actual math and the research and doing that. But I'm assuming you have to factor in DC and what's coming out of DC, not only from the standpoint of actual law, but proposed law as well when talking about people's retirement, especially I feel for people that are right at the retirement, they're getting ready to cross the tape and go into retirement. And now we have all this nonsense that's going on in DC from the standpoint of taxation. They're floating ideas about interrupting Roth rules and all kinds of things. Can you weigh in a little bit? I know you're not political like me. I mean, you're just not. I know that reading your stuff. But can you weigh in on what's happening and what you think people should be preparing for?
Yeah, so I mean, my focus has been on DC. I've worked in the DC business now for about 20 years. And I think why that's so important is Americans do not save outside of defined contribution plans. The only reason there's any money in IRAs is because people roll money from a DC plan to an IRA. Now, I hope that changes, right? But DC is the preeminent way that Americans save for retirement. Now,
and DC for people out there in English is 401ks.
401k, 403b.
Yeah, it's that type of plan that you are employer sponsored type plan where you're putting money in and they're matching whatever. That's what DC means.
Right, a defined contribution plan. And so, people get all bent out of shape. Like, sure, they could cover more people. They aren't perfect, but those that have them and use them well, it's been an effective way to save for retirement, right? There have been positive changes to how we operate defined contribution plans in the U.S. We have, these things called default investments or target date funds. You might get automatically enrolled, all good things. But there is, there's obvious, there's budget shortfalls, and a place that they always threaten to fix it is by overhauling or removing certain benefits that we've had in the 401k structure for a long time. I hate to speculate on legislation as it's working its way through because it just changes. But I want to see us do more as a country to open these programs up and provide more incentives versus the opposite. And I worry that we are moving in the wrong direction with some of these proposals, just because they are looking for ways to close shortfalls in budgets, and that is a very appetizing way to do it, especially based upon the way, for example, the monies are scored during the budgetary process.
Well, and also too, things like trying to tax unrealized gains and things like that just are head scratchers to people that are thinking pragmatically and rationally. Even though I was watching a news program this morning and one of the hosts was like, this is a no-brainer. This makes total sense to tax unrealized gains. And I'm going, really?
You want to disincentivize savings? It sure does, but it does. I mean,
what? It's interesting what's happening out there. If you're following the Elon Musk person that started Tesla, he's got a conundrum on his hands of probably a $15 or $20 billion tax bill, depending on what's going to happen. If you don't know what I'm talking about, pull that up. I was talking to Jason Fichtner the other day, and I was, I know that you both work for the Alliance for Lifetime Income and trying to get the messaging out, etc. And I'll ask you the same question I asked him. Do you think the annuity industry as a whole has kind of dropped the ball on the monopoly that they have for lifetime income? Because when people hear the word annuity, they vomit. I call annuity the curse word in the financial industry, which leads to the question, hey, Stan, why did you name yourself Stan the Annuity Man? I believe in these products. I believe in the transfer risk nature of them. And I think a monopoly is good when the product is good. How can the messaging be better to the public out there when every single person already owns Social Security, which is the best inflation annuity on the planet? What's your take on that as a smart guy in the room?
I mean, there have been Dateline specials against annuities, right? Chris Hansen pops out and says hello, like bad things are about to happen. I don't think it was actually Chris Hansen, but I think as an industry, we're moving forward, right? I think the problem is that you often get judged by the worst within your ranks.
Yeah, there's bad apples in every industry for sure.
Yes, and I would even go as far to say that maybe there's more bad apples in this world versus other financial products because there isn't the need to be a fiduciary, right? A lot of people out there are selling product, they make a commission, and they're done. They have no, they're not really looking out for the best interests of their clients.
Correct.
And so, like, that's one way to address it. I don't know that I think that that's the best way. I think the one thing that has gotten me excited is that more advisors are looking into these products. And I get so tired of advisors saying that they hate annuities. And and anyone listening might even know what I'm.
And it's the dumbest statement of all time. It's like saying I hate all restaurants. It's just
right,
dumb.
And that's my point. And so, like, I'm like, advisors that and I will often engage them on LinkedIn, and they never have an original thing to say because like they always say the same thing. They say like, oh, I've seen so many crappy products, and I'm like, listen, like, do you buy crappy mutual funds for your client's portfolio?
Right.
There's crappy funds out there, but you know what you can do because you have human capital specifically in helping clients accomplish their financial goals. So what you're good at is helping select products that help them do those things. And so when it comes to investments, you can pick a portfolio of the best mutual funds or ETFs around, right? Of course I can. Okay, well, let's just acknowledge that there's a spectrum of quality of annuities out there too.
Sure.
You mean to tell me there's not a single one that can't help your clients? Oh, well, that's when they stop. They're like, well, I'm just like really, like, if you have 100 clients that are retirees, sure, maybe only 20 of them need one. I'm just going to pick a really low number.
Sure.
But for that 20, it is like a rock solid option that you should be considering, but you're not. And so I think I'd like to think that there are more advisors that are realizing that like, being aware of at least certain strategies, the ones that best in your store, whether it's a DSB, I don't know that I have a strong preference on the product type as long as it's a quality product.
It comes down to what, I always ask people two questions. What do you want the money to contractually do? And when do you want those contractual guarantees to start? Yeah. From there, then we go to the product that's going to provide the highest contractual guarantee, and you go to my site and run the quotes yourself. The point is, I think the industry that lasts for a lifetime income, I'd rather, instead of sponsoring the Stones, and I love Mick and the Stones, I've partied with them in Bahamas many a time, I'd rather that money be spent, bring everyone in, and let's have it out. And let's get one message, let's all have one message, and let's go forward, and let's get in front of this demographic tidal wave. Now, the interesting part is, even if they don't do that, the annuity industry is going to benefit because there's a demographic tidal wave, and they're all looking for guarantees. But the time for education is certainly now. That's the reason I have 400 plus videos and do 20 a month and do my podcast and written 7 books on educating the public that, yes, you might think it's a curse word, but it's not. And I'll one last thing, and I want you to comment on this. Banks and brokerage firms will bring me in undercover and have me speak to their masters of the universe, people that are managing a lot of money. And I'll say this: if you have the income floor in place, because I used to work for Morgan Stanley, Dean Woodard, Payne Weber, UBS. I did that. I was on that side of the table. If you have the income floor in place and it's contractual, you're a better investor or you're a better advisor. And there's no disputing that. Do you think that's true?
Undoubtedly. I mean, I think that it changes your client conversation, right? I mean, advisors know that they don't usually have all the assets, especially that people have tons of money. And so I think that when you evolve your conversation from, I'm going to create alpha, and I mean, alpha is not an easy thing to do, to I'm helping you accomplish your financial goals and ensuring that you have income for life. That to me just is a better story. It is a remarkable story, and you're actually helping the client do what they're effectively paying you to do, but in a different way. I mean, a lot of advisors grew up building portfolios. This idea of planning is a new thing.
Well, and most advisors always say I have cowboy boots older than they are because they've never seen a down market and they just think it's always going to go up. There will be a reckoning. You and I both know that. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it will happen. I wanted to ask you, without you giving away the intellectual property pie here, and the main company that you work for is Prudential, and I know that you're doing research and trying to create solutions for good retirement outcomes. What surprised you in the past few years of what you've found, or have you been surprised as you're going down a path and looking at blue water strategies that's never been looked at before?
Well, I think the most interesting place for the future, and I'm not the only person that's kind of well aware of this, is making 401k plans retirement income vehicles. Today, 401ks get you to retirement. I'd like to see the future as them getting people through retirement. It's not to suggest that individuals can't or shouldn't roll out to an advisor, but a 401k it has an institutional fiduciary. It has professional money management. You can get economies of scale. It's not a defined benefit plan, but you can get it pretty close if you start layering in guaranteed income, protected strategies, advisors, advice. And, where I get excited is just for mass America. I know that people that have lots of money will always want to go with an advisor, but the idea of an institutional fiduciary available to everyone, having low cost, high quality options with some kind of guaranteed or protected strategy, that to me is a better way forward than, hey, why don't you save some money in this DC 401k plan, and then when you're done later, figure it out on your own.
Yeah, the current process is this is a good and bad example, is you accumulate in the 401k, you retire, you roll that money over to an IRA, and then you go to a bad chicken dinner seminar or a very expensive steak dinner seminar, and some idiot without proper licensure to talk about it, sells 100% of your portfolio into an annuity, which is the reason the annuity industry has a bad reputation. Unfortunately, that's what's happening. I hope that what you're proposing happens at a faster scale. My only question is, because annuity products are commodity products and they change every 7 to 10 days like a gallon of milk from a quotation standpoint, the fiduciary part, I'm scratching my head a little bit on. If you are a company A and you're offering income solutions inside your defined contribution plan, whatever that is, and you have 3 choices, are you being a fiduciary? I'm not sure about that.
Well, so the decision to offer the product is a fiduciary choice that's made by the plan sponsor. You can hire a consultant or delegate that via what's called a 330 arrangement.
Sure.
You can also hire someone to advise on whether you should own the product or not, given your facts and circumstances. So, there's all these different ways that employers or plan sponsors can delegate fiduciary responsibility. I see most of them going down that path. If I'm a company, I want to offer a 401k. I don't want to have all this liability for it. So I think what we'll see is more entities come in that they can hire to do and provide solutions for participants that reduces or eliminates the fiduciary risk for the employer.
As Wayne Gretzky says, you skate to where the puck's going to be, not behind the puck. For you, where's the puck headed other than what you just told us on the 401k side? Where do you think, with this demographic tidal wave, what advice do you have for people here? Because they're thirsty for it. That's the reason this podcast is growing by leaps and bounds. They know it's not salesy. They know I'm bringing on the smartest people in the country to talk about it. You're talking to thousands and thousands of listeners and viewers right now. They all have different viewpoints, but in the current environment that we're in, both market and political and global for that matter, this is a tough one, but can you give a broad view to give people places to go to think about it, read about it? Obviously we'll have your stuff. I know I asked you a big question, but can you help with people? Because that's in essence why they tuned in. They wanted to hear that.
Yeah. I don't know that I have a great answer. I think that to me, one of the most important things for people is to get personalized advice or guidance from a fiduciary. I think that for most Americans, it's not necessarily economically viable. I think that it would cost too much, and you'll end up in something that you don't need or want. I think that, education is critical. I think that more and more advisors are moving away from being portfolio pros to being, holistic planners. But, I wish I had a better single site to send someone to, but I think trying to educate yourself is the key. And then bringing someone in that you think can complement that is a professional fiduciary that, has access to, a whole suite of products and solutions, not just ETFs or mutual funds, is the best path forward.
20 years from now, you'll be the ripe old age of 60, correct?
That is correct.
Where are you going to be? What are you going to be doing?
What's
the future for you?
I think I'll still be doing this. I am not one to dawdle. It's ironic that I'm the head of retirement research, and I don't think I'll ever retire. And I want financial independence. I want to have freedom to do whatever I want, but I really enjoy my job. I've been interested in this industry since I was in high school. I love what I do, so I think I'll be doing something like this as long as I possibly can.
Go back to what you just said to high school. When did the passion, when did the fork in the road moment happen? When did you pick up the fork?
I mean, I convinced some buddies of mine to give me money to invest in a stock portfolio in high school. I was like reading Forbes. I would doing internships at brokerage companies. I had like 10 internships in college, at the Board of Trade, at 2 accounting firms, at every other. I mean, the thing that's changed is, when I first got into business, I was more geared towards doing like individual personal financial planning. So I work with individuals. Now I would say I'm more like institutional developing solutions, but it's all the same, right? It's all trying to help people achieve better financial outcomes. And so I think that to me has always been a goal of mine, and I'm still doing it just in a different way right now.
Were you ever in the retail side client? Okay, you did that for a while, and then what was the epiphany for you to go from there to the research side? Was it just the accumulation of degrees?
So I actually passed the CFP, the CLU, and CHFC when I was 21.
Nice.
I was like a CFA at 24. I had MSFS at 22. I think so. I had an internship selling life insurance at 19, and that was interesting, right? I did that for 3 years, and they tell you to do things, and you don't always ask the question like, is that truly in the client's best interest? And I think that if you want to find the right answer, you can, but a lot of my colleagues didn't necessarily want to educate themselves on what to do. And so, I was like, well, I want to make sure that I'm actually helping people that count on me, that I'm giving them good advice. And I was like, I needed to learn this myself. And so I just started radically taking, more and more classes and tests. And I had like 8 or 9. I have 2 master's degrees, a PhD, and I had like 9 designations at one point in time. So I'm a big geek. But like, I think it was all geared towards being able to, when I tell someone that I think this is the right thing to do, it's because I've spent the time to learn it. And I might get back into working with individuals again at some point. I really like the more kind of institutional focus now, but I think that for me, education's been the key, because yes, I obviously listen to others and take their opinion, but I've got enough of a background now that I can kind of call things as I see it as well. So.
Well, the reason I ask that is, as I read your stuff, I can tell you've been in the game. You've actually been on the other side of the table, because you can read that into, there's some people out there that have never either sold or been on the retail side. I think it's important for you to be there just because you understand people and the fact that they don't know what they don't know. And then your research then is geared toward filling in that gap, because you're not assuming that everyone has a foundational knowledge of these products, et cetera. I run into that every day in the annuity world, where I'm just on the fixed annuity side and just selling contractual guarantees. People just don't know about them. It's been such a poorly educated thing the industry has just done a poor job. By the way, you went to Texas Tech University, and what people probably should know about Texas Tech, and I went and spoke there a couple of times, it's one of the few, if only, university that has a financial planning degree. And if you ever ask, well, who was David Blanchett before David Blanchett? His name was Harold Avinsky. And he started all that, and with his partner Dina Katz, they started that. Can you comment a little bit about the Texas Tech program? Because I don't even think people understand that that's even out there and available. But I think it's important to know that even some of the universities are starting to address this from an accreditation standpoint.
Sure. So, for lack of a better term, Texas Tech is like the Harvard of personal financial planning. Like, it is the largest.
Lubbock, Texas.
Texas.
Lubbock, Texas.
Now, so lots of schools have, more and more schools offer undergraduate degrees in personal financial planning.
Right.
It is the largest, without a doubt, school that offers advanced curriculum. So masters and especially PhD. But, they've been going now for 25 plus years. And I would guess that almost everyone that's leading a program in the country now came out of Texas Tech. And so, there's a group of folks, you mentioned, Harold and Dean and others that kind of, created this program. And, when after I finished my MBA, I was doing research, and I wanted to get a more, background in, what people do that do research. They get a PhD, and that was just a great opportunity. So I'm a big fan of Texas Tech. Lubbock is an interesting city, but
yeah, it is.
It's a phenomenal program. And individuals that are listening that, want to pursue this as a career, I would definitely recommend not only Texas Tech, but really any school, that offers a personal financial planning degree if you want to learn more about this, especially in college.
Interesting. David, I hope to have you on again. The time has flown. Any last and final words for I always do this with my celebrity guests. Any last words for the listeners and viewers before we close this thing up?
I think we're good.
I think you covered it. You really did. Now, who have we been listening to? Smart guy in the room, David Blanchett. He's, I'll have all his stuff on my site. He'll have his own page. You can replay the podcast on all major platforms and on the YouTube channel if you want to see how young he actually is. But I appreciate you joining us, and I will see you next week on Fun with Annuities.